Welcome to the Dance NYC 2022 Symposium, Life Cycles, Livelihoods, Legacies. We will be with you shortly. Today's schedule. Today we gathered for a welcome and wake up, morning sessions, an 11:30 dance break presented by Kumbe Center for African and Diaspora Dance, and 12 p.m. early afternoon sessions. We will now begin our 2:30 late afternoon sessions, followed by a 4:15 community daily debrief, where all attendees are encouraged to attend and discuss the day's activities. At 5 o'clock, head over to our exhibitor hall again to explore our second virtual expo showcase of the day. And at 6 o'clock, we will present our keynote presentation. Accessibility. ASL interpretation and live captioning will be provided for today's session. A stream-to-text link will be posted in the chat and participation guide for access to the live transcription. Stay connected with us by posting your takeaways on social media using the hashtags DanceSimp, DanceNYC 2022, and DanceSimp2022. On Instagram at dance.nyc, on Twitter at dance.nyc, and on Facebook at dance/NYC. Community guidelines. Based on Dance NYC's values of justice, equity, and inclusion, we agree to share our opinions, challenge perspectives, and engage or debate respectfully, and acknowledge and course correct if harm is caused. Honor everyone's personhood and humanity. Not tolerate speech that is disparaging, abusive, violent, or that is intended to defame someone's character publicly. Some features not to miss. Build your agenda of sessions. Connect with other attendees. Join community conversations. Visit the exhibitor hall. Don't forget to check out the 2022 Symposium digital program book. We are happy to be in community with you. Thanks for joining.
My name is Jovanka, and I identify as a cisgender, non-disabled woman of Afro-Latinx descent. My pronouns are she, her, and I am speaking with you from the ancestral land of the Tongva people, now known as Los Angeles. I have dark brown skin and medium-length black hair with bangs. I have green rim glasses and wearing a long sleeve gray shirt with a large crystal pendant, and I'm sitting in a large room with blurry background. I have a deep voice and speak with a mild Spanish language accent. First, thank you for joining us for the completely digital 2022 Symposium held on the WUVA platform. As we are at the mercy of technology, we want to remind you that there may be delays, sound issues, and changing circumstances that may occur during our time together. We invite you to extend us and each other grace and patience. Second, ASL interpreters from Sign Nexus and closed captioning services provided by the Viscardi Center will be available throughout the session. A stream-to-text link will also be available and posted in the chat for further reference. We will also post speaker information in the description below and under the speakers module on the left side of your WUVA web app or the menu of your WUVA mobile app. This information is also available on our website. Third, feel free to post comments you want to share with the community in the chat section to the right of this event room. Dance NYC's moderators will be interacting with you there. For this session, the panelists have decided to hold the Q&A until the very end to ensure a presence of mind and ease in the conversation. However, Please feel free to post your comments and reflections in the chat for the community's benefit. Feel free to call our helpline at 212-966-4454, voice only, for technical support or to propose comments if the chat is not accessible. After the session ends, there will be a session follow-up in the community section of Huba where you can continue the conversation. Lastly, we hope you will help us amplify these conversations. Repost, tag us, and share your takeaways on Twitter at DanceNYC, Instagram at dance.nyc, and Facebook dance/NYC using the hashtag DanceSynth. And now we enter self and community care, performers and holistic wellness. Dance practitioners with well-rehearsed wellness practices reflect on caring for mind, body, spirit, community, and land, while using dancers' bodies as vessels for exploratory performance and creativity. This panel will delve into holistic wellness beyond training and nutrition. Now, welcoming our moderator, Ohio Master Urban Farmer and founder and artistic director of Brotherhood Dance, Orlando Zane Hunter. Welcome, Orlando.
Hi, thank you so much. This is Orlando speaking. I am a dark-skinned, same gender-loving being. I am seated on in Minnesota on Lakota land in Wapakute territory. I use they, them pronouns. I have on a yellow sweater with a jean vest, and I have locks that are braided down to the nape of my neck. My screen is blurry, and I am really excited to be here to hold this space in creation with great mother spirits in this virtual world, as I am at my mother's house in Minnesota, which I'm grateful for. And I have the pleasure of facilitating this wonderful session focusing on self and communal care as performers and practitioners in the dance field. So I would like to first bring on the panelists. I will be the moderator of this session. And I would love for each panelist to do a self-introduction. They all have fascinating entry points to how they've integrated care and wellness into their life and their craft. So let's start with Mia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mia Morris. I am a medium-toned Black femme-presenting person. I am deaf and disabled. I am residing currently in, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing this correctly, Piscataway Conoy land, also known as Maryland. I have on a rust-colored shirt. I am wearing a gold necklace and earrings. I wear glasses. Behind me, there's a pale wall, as well as the lower portion of that wall is painted dark. And behind me, there is a painting of some gorgeous melanated women. That is painting by Tim Asker, entitled Beautiful, or Colored Beauty, correction. It's entitled Colored Beauty. I am here because I feel that self-care and community care is almost interchangeable. You can't have one without the other. And yeah, I'm honored to be here and excited to get into this conversation with everyone.
You can pass it along, or if anybody feels.
All right, Ellie, are you ready to go?
Hi, my name is Ellie Kushner. I think I'm in transition with my name. It's also Kusner or Kusner. Any of that will work. I use she, her pronouns. I have dirty blonde hair, pale skin. I'm wearing a black shirt. And behind me is a white wall and some of my Pilates apparatus, as well as a beautiful rubber tree plant. And I'm just noticing that my bathroom door is wide open behind me as well. So that's my bathroom. And I am here on Lenape land in the West Village of Manhattan, where I'm incredibly lucky to live at West Beth Artist Residency. I've just moved in here. Note of self-care for yourselves. Put your name on all the lists, all the artist housing, all the affordable housing. Yeah, that's a self-care action for sure. I am a female, white woman, non-disabled, and my professional identity is as an educator, a dance educator, a movement coach, and an advocate for dancer health and wellness. In those capacities, I teach Pilates to all different people, including people at the Juilliard School, dancers at the Juilliard School, and I also teach wellness lectures there. And I like to teach, I teach a lot of dancers who I describe as being like in the twilight of their career, in transition out of performing, or maybe still performing in some capacity, maybe moving on to totally different careers. And I'm also the chair of the IADMS, International Association of Dance Medicine and Science, Dance Educators Community. And I will leave it there and pass it to Reverend Nafisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie, and thank you everyone, Orlando, and thank you everyone from Dance NYC for inviting me. I am ecstatic to be here today. My name is Reverend Nafisa Sharif, and I am the founder and CEO of Entering the Holy of Holies, an institute of learning and healing. We specialize in meditation and spiritual tools for transformation. I am a cisgender African-American woman. My pronouns that I use are she and her. I am wearing all white cotton clothing today. My head is wrapped in a traditional West African gele or head wrap, and I'm wearing a white shawl and a white tunic from India. Behind me are two pictures. To my right is Baba Muktananda from India. He brought the meditation the meditation revolution to the West in the mid-70s. And to my left is his successor, Gudamaya Chidvalastananda of the Siddha Yoga path. In the middle, I'm going to move over a little bit so you can see my beautiful 5-ringed indigenous American dream catcher that has white feathers on the outside and crystals and gemstones throughout the dream catcher. I am living in the Munse Lenape village of the Bronx, and I am also a traditional West African dance instructor and have been my entire life, so not performing so much anymore. But I actually teach online now on Wednesday evenings, so you're more than welcome to join my class. And I have free morning meditations that are open to the public not every morning, but Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday from 8 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. on both Facebook and Instagram live simultaneously. And then I save them so you can visit those platforms anytime throughout the day or in the future and participate in the free meditation. Thank you. And I pass to Elena.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elena Sundick. I use she, her pronouns, and I identify as a white, cisgendered, non-disabled woman. I'm speaking here today from the Lenape land. I'm in Lower Manhattan in the East Village. And a visual description, I have long brown hair. I'm in a mostly white background, but I have a yellow oil painting and a letter from my parents. Shout out to them, they're amazing. Couldn't be here today without them. So a little bit about my background. I am a graduate of the Ellie School, and I'm currently in my final semester of undergrad at Hunter College, where I'm double majoring in dance and cognitive somatic studies, which is basically like psychology of the body. I'm also an intern with the JKO School at American Ballet Theater. And most relevant to our conversation today is I've been researching mental health in the dance community for the past year through the Mellon Public Humanities Foundation, where I'm a research fellow. And my research primarily focuses on looking at how dance is a modality of healing, as well as dance training sort of being the perpetrator of other forms of trauma. So that's been extremely interesting. And I think it's so amazing that I get to speak about it today. It's a very important and I think kind of not spoken about enough topic. So I'm very excited. And my research was sort of the momentum for an article that I wrote for Dance Spirit a few months ago, which talks about this basic idea that dance is therapy and dancers need therapy. And that's really the catalyst for everything that I've been doing the past year, because I think it goes without being said that dance is truly a celebration and a foundation of joy. But I think I have to acknowledge that it also has affected me and affected my behavior. And so I'm really looking forward to sharing what I've discovered throughout my research process. So thank you so much. I'm very honored to be here today.
Thank you for sharing. So as everyone can see, there's a range of how these women are engaging in care in the field. So to be transparent, I generated a few questions previously so they can engage in, but that I thought was helpful for the field in this time to reflect on. So I want to start with who your people? Who your people? Who got you here? Because this work of self-care, the work of getting to this space that we are right now today, there were people that you may talk to this morning or who've taught you dance in the past. So I want to know who your people.
I'll jump in. My name is Nafisa, Reverend Nafisa, and I'm going to piggyback on Elena to say that my legacy begins with my home, with my parents. I'm one of 13 children, and we did not dance and go to school for music for a very long time. And it was a moment of my great-grandmother passing that 3 of my grandmother's friends came to the repast and realized my mother had all these girls send us to her dance school once a week on Saturdays for an hour. And we all went. We all did shows at Town Hall and in the 40s, with the costumes and the shoes. And then one day, one of the musicians said to me, there's a community class, a community class in the community center, which was 2 blocks from my home. And I went there and met a gentleman named Ako, or Lee Thompson, who has since made his transition in the last few years, not quite sure when, but maybe 3 years ago. And he took me and one of my sisters under his wing and just began teaching us all the spiritual information about Kemet and Egypt and I am that I am. And we're little Catholic girls from Bronx, and so we didn't know anything about what he was talking about. But he believed in us, and we were hard workers, and we danced around the city with him. And he taught me to become he trained me to become the person who would start the class, do the warm-up, and then he would come in and do the movement across the floor, those of us who know the structure of a class, right? And one day, all of these Adonises walked in, tall, beautiful dancers. Now I'm 16. And all of these dancers, so perhaps for most of you, imagine an Ailey dancer or a dancer of Harlem dancer, walking in, 10 of them, walking into your room, and your little 16-year-old, nappy hair, like, you must be kidding me. All I have is training from once a week on Saturdays for an hour. And I ran to Akko and told him these people were here to take class. And I was bawling, crying. I did not want to teach. And he made me go out and teach them. And I did the warm-up. And they were sitting, some of them right in front of me, and nodding at each other, like giving each other the okay, like I knew what I was talking about. And then, of course, our co came in and the class was just phenomenal. But one of the dancers invited me to take the audition for the Chuck Davis Dance Company. And that was the beginning of me segueing into a professional career. So Chuck Davis was known, he too has made his transition in the past few years. He was known as the man who put African dance on the map. Of course, that's not true, but he did so much to promote African dance and culture when you talk about inclusion and diversity. This was a man who was at least 6 foot tall, and he was a big guy. And to see him with pictures with little white children teaching them, and just everyone is beaming. So I think it was Ellie or Elena, I'm not which one, talked about dance. I think Elena being so healing, and people just flocked to him, as tall as he was, and as big as he was, and as sometimes scary as he was. He was so charismatic. You wanted to be with him. And so by 17, I was traveling. Now, again, I'm a little Catholic schoolgirl from the Bronx. My parents put great restriction. I had to keep a certain grade average. I had to take my books with me. And I had to make sure that every chore, everything got done. But I did. And I went on to work with Chuck Davis for 10 years, between 75 and 85, until he moved his company to North Carolina and started a whole nother career down there. And from there, I've been more of an independent dancer and working on films. And one of my biggest accomplishments is working with Stevie Wonder for 2 years. That was like phenomenal, to be the woman who's dancing to Overjoyed. This is all pre-Reverend Nafisa. So dancing to Overjoyed, the soloist with Stevie Wonder, the two of us at Radio City, the two of us at the Apollo, the two of us around the country, the world. So it was phenomenal. I don't know exactly where or when it happened, but somewhere around 2005, that spiritual alarm clock went off. And I went into ministry. So I think I'll stop there.
I was like, yeah, stop there.
Another question.
That was really rich. Thank you for sharing. Where your people at? Somebody else.
I love, Reverend Nafisa, this is Ellie speaking, all the invitations in your life from people. And I feel that too, that there have been these women really in my life who have made suggestions or invitations in moments where I just felt like I must listen to this person, and as a young child, I trained in ballet, and I had this Pilates teacher from the time I was like 12 named Barbara Harris. And in addition to instilling some physical strength, in retrospect, she also really modeled moving out of dance and still into other things while still maintaining a relationship with dance. And as a young ballet student, that wasn't necessarily something I knew was possible. And so I feel grateful that she did that for me. And I also studied with this woman named Clarice Marshall, who's an amazing body coach, movement coach, who started to do some breath work with me. I have chronic asthma that is at times severe. And she introduced me to an Alexander technique teacher named Gwen Ellison, who does a lot of breathing work. And she really helped me retrain my breathing habits, which had become really dysfunctional from a life of asthma, and were really limiting my capacity health-wise and performance-wise. And in addition to that, she really taught me about some of the things that are like tenets in the Alexander technique, which is like being present, identifying where you are, and maybe looking 1/2 a step forward to where you could go next. As both a teacher and a person, and that really informed my teaching a lot. And Raz Newman, who's a dance choreographer from New York City, one day when I was in a transition out of dance, or in what Elena can speak more to, when I was in a complicated relationship with dance, Raz was a friend of mine and a colleague, and she said, you should look into this dance science program in London. It's run by this woman named Emma Redding. Emma Redding sort of invented dance science. She started the first dance science program at Trinity Laban in London. So I went there, and she also was a great model of being a researcher and a dancer and a teacher all in one. And I feel a lot of gratitude for that she demonstrated that. And finally, I just have to acknowledge Alicia Graf Mack, who is the current Dean of Dance. Sometimes I like to call her the Queen of Dance, but her real title is Dean of Dance at Juilliard. And she really is invested in the students' health and well-being and has made a lot of programmatic changes to that end, which I have been involved in. And so I feel a lot of gratitude to her. And lastly, to students, because it is the students who really, first of all, up my game all the time. I had to keep up with them. And, talking to them about health and wellness is very therapeutic for me as well. And they really let me know what my next steps are going to be. When I think, I'm sort of stuck, they bring a question or a comment or an understanding of something that just charges me into the next path. So I just have so much gratitude to them at Juilliard and everywhere that I teach to my students. So those are my people who are here on the planet with us right now.
This is Orlando speaking. Yes. So I want to move into thinking about what care looks like for you and your craft. And as we've just heard, community is a part of that, that crafting. So if Elena wants to take the question.
Yes, I love this question. I feel like it covers everything that I've been thinking about the past year, everything that, kind of caused me to do my research in the first place. So I think for me, care, first and foremost, is honoring where I am and who I am in the present. Because I think of, like Ellie mentioned, dance is a relationship. Mm-hmm. And so, for a dancer, the two most important relationships that you'll have in your life are to yourself and to dance itself. If you don't change and you don't evolve and you don't grow and foster your relationship to dance, you cannot have a healthy relationship to dance. And that's something that I've learned. So not that I know everything about relationships, I'm 21 and I'm still learning a lot, but to my knowledge, when you enter a relationship with someone or something, you are making a promise to change and grow and stick by that thing, no matter what changes. So your environment can change, but you're making a promise to adapt with that person or that thing or whatever it is, whatever situation it is. And I think a lot of relationships are about need. So meeting each other, meeting the thing where it is. And so with dance, I've had to grieve and mourn so many versions of myself as a dancer. So 15-year-old me had certain expectations around dance and what that meant, what it meant to be a dancer, what it meant to wake up in the morning and be a dancer. And now 21-year-old me has a very different definition of what it means to be a dancer. Mm-hmm. So I think it's about not only meeting dance for what the dance industry has told you what it means to be a dancer, but waking up and asking yourself every morning, what do I need? Do I need ballet? Do I need to dance in my kitchen to Amy Winehouse for an hour? Do I need to go for a walk around the block? Your worth is not dependent on whether you took a ballet class that day. And I'm just learning that. And I'm like, oh, that is so freeing. That is so wonderful that you can still be a dancer and just dance in your kitchen. And that is valid. So I think constantly letting go of those expectations and just honoring where you are with dance is so important. And the second thing is acknowledging the pipeline of dance and how you, or for me at least, I come from a classical ballet background. So from a very young age, I was taught like, you're going to go through your training. And then when you graduate from high school, you're going to try to get a job in a company. And if you don't, then you're not successful, or you're not a dancer. And that kind of messed me up because I'm in a completely different place now. I'm involved with dance in so many different ways. I'm teaching, I'm in arts administration, I'm writing about dance. And those are all beautiful things. And those all count for dance. So I think taking the pipeline and like debunking it and just saying like, you are still good. You are still a dancer. And thinking of dance as like the myth of Sisyphus, and dance is the boulder, and I'm the guy pushing the rock up the hill. And I find that the dancers that can really embrace the process of showing up and working on your craft and just enjoying the process of showing up every day for yourself and doing it, that is how you care for yourself. Because if you don't let go and you don't surrender to the process, you will be very unhappy. So I encourage everyone to care for yourself by like really being objective about what you've been told dance needs to look like change the narrative, change the process, think about how this thing fits into your life, and not just about what does ballet need from me? What does dance need from me? But what is it doing for me? Like, is it helping me? Is dance doing this for me? Like, is it making me a happier person? And if the answer is no, take a day, go for a walk. Just changing your vocabulary. That to me is how I care for myself. And that's all I have to say about that.
This is Orlando speaking. Oh my gosh. A message from the youth, honey. A message from the youth. Mia, what do you have to say about this?
This is Mia. Self-care for me is essentially just meeting your access needs to allow yourself to show up as your whole authentic self. At my core, that is one of my main beliefs. So much so that in my effort of practicing self-care today, I completely turned off my work brain and realized I didn't even tell you guys what my dance background is. So, hello, I am Mia. I am the executive director at Dance for All Bodies, where we aim to dismantle ableism within the dance world. And we also offer community classes free of charge that are donation-based for all of our participants online, so that anyone and everyone that wants to dance is able to have access to dancing. Because again, one of our main values is that if you have a body, you can dance. And it is our absolute mission to ensure that everyone understands that. And I frequently get pushback on that. But no, really, if you have a physical body, you can dance. So I just want to get that message out there. It's been said. That was my moment. Okay. But yes, so for self-care and community care, you can't have one without the other, is my viewpoint. I kind of hate using this as metaphor, but you can't pour from an empty glass. But I like to take that one step further and say, how are you refilling that glass? Like, I know for me, that is being in community with either my dance community or my faith community. I need that space to just show up and be myself and be accepted as myself, so that I can then also turn around and offer that space to others. So, excuse me. I've lost my train of thought when I coughed. Oh no. Oh, the joys of having a brain injury. But yes, so we'll stop there.
Reverend Nafisa, I know you also had some thoughts on this question around what self-care looks like for you.
Thank you, Orlando. Hi, everyone. It's Nafisa. For me, I'm going to go back to 2020, March 2020, when COVID hit hard for all of us. For me personally, long before 2020, but in March 2020, I began offering free meditation classes every day online for people, as I mentioned earlier in my introduction, because everyone felt so frazzled. When I asked God, what do I do? How do I offer service at this time when people are so afraid and losing so much, not just physical things, but people, they're losing their life. People around them are dying left and right. And meditation was the one thing that came through repeatedly. So every day, 7 days a week for about a year and a half, without fail, I offered meditation to people so they could have some time to just ground themselves, and fill themselves with whatever they needed. We always bring in the God of your understanding. You don't have to wear white or look like me or wrap your head, but you do need to, if I can use the word need, to hold still and develop, as Elena said, that relationship with yourself, a deeper relationship with yourself. What do you need? And one of the downsides or upsides of the coronavirus was we were quarantined, especially in the beginning. So we were very much alone. Whether you lived alone or whether you even lived with family members, you were home. You didn't have your distractions to go out. And so we saw on Facebook and Instagram, so many people were developing self-care products, whether it was something healthy with shea butter or essential oils or fabrics, because that creativity was being nurtured and pushed to the forefront because we could not go out for our jobs. Personally, for me, there are some things I do daily without fail that have nothing to do with community or anybody else. It has to do with my relationship with myself, as Mia said, keeping my glass not half full, but absolutely full and overflowing. So I pour a libation every day to the ancestors to invoke the presence of God, to honor those, as we said earlier, the lineage where I come from, and also to guide me where I'm going. I take time to smudge, which is a Native American practice, an indigenous American practice, to clarify and purify my room or my temple where I am now, and to bring in the energy of the grace of God, the Mother Earth and Father Sky. I take time every day to burn my candles and to honor not just these beloved gurus, but you can't see my whole room, but no matter which way you turn, there's an altar to somebody somewhere. And to just honor the fact that I don't move by myself. I move by the grace of God. However you understand that in your religion, I'm an interfaith minister. So this idea of diversity and equity, inclusion is right in tandem and in path with, aligned with who I am as an interfaith minister. And so these are things I do for myself first and foremost. And I always invite people to find that practice for themselves. Whatever your daily routine, you do it without fail. Because what if your community, or if you move away from your community, or like with the pandemic, we didn't have access to the community until you got a Logitech camera and you got Zoom and you were able to figure out how to do this platform. For a minute, we were without our community. And so what do? So finding something that first fills your cup, not just to half full, but overflowing. And once it's overflowing, then it spills out to the community. And you can find ways to then share that free of charge, donation, low cost, so people can come and benefit from what you have filled yourself with. Thank you.
Yes. So this is Orlando speaking. Reverend Nafisa, I actually want to go a little deeper into what you said, because it really flows into the next question around how you see your practice echoed in your environment.
A little different right now because I'm no longer teaching in person. So I get calls and emails all the time, text me, when are you going to start teaching in public? Because when I was teaching for 17 years, more than 17 years, but 17 years at my last location, the classes were very interactive. So you came in and you got a hug, something we don't do so easily anymore. You were greeted with a smile and you were welcomed. Everybody is welcome into my classes. This is my traditional West African dance classes. So people come ready to just get down and listen to some drums, and you wind up exercising, singing, learning folklore, and then meditating. So this is how what I do personally for myself spills into the world, that you simply walk into a class and look like you're just going to take a dance class. But then the whole body gets nurtured, your mind, your body, your spirit. And there's many, many stories I can share, but this one I'll share, which is brief, which is I got an email from someone who takes my class regularly, and she started by saying, don't try to remember who this person is that I'm going to tell you this story about, because you won't remember her. But there were 5 women who converged for a conference in North Carolina, I'm going to say. And one woman spoke about, she was from Boston and was visiting New York just for the summer. Her father had just died. And she said what got her through the grieving process was taking this woman's class. Now, we don't even know each other. And at the end of her African dance class, she did meditation. And she cried through the entire meditation. But it helped her to get through her grief of her father just passing. So it was a lovely moment of someone I do know sharing an email about someone I don't know. And here was just this small group of 5 people. And so I think what I want to say to everyone is, you know, I say earlier, I'm old, so I've been teaching a long time. Back in the 90s, Ellie's like, Elena's 21. I'm like much older than you, Elena. But back in the 90s, no one was doing meditation or doing cool downs in classes. And that was a great segue into this is how what I do for me spilling into the community, that you don't know what you're doing until I now started to teach it in the mid 90s for real. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Orlando speaking. Ellie, I want to pass it over to you with that same question around how your practice is echoed in your environment.
Yeah, this is Ellie. I love that transition because, you know, the lack of cool down in the 90s. I think I see student populations really opening up to other ways of doing things. So, you know, I train in a ballet environment. I now work at a conservatory. These are very, we can call them structured environments. And I see students really being open to information, even things like conditioning. You know, in the 90s, you know, people didn't cross train. There's oh, you'll get bulky muscles, or you won't, you know, it won't be good for your body. And now students are, we've worked really hard to debunk a lot of those myths. And I see the change trickling in. I always say it's changing slowly and in pockets, because there are other places I'm aware that are not changing and creating a lot of that trauma that Elena alluded to. Yeah, and questioning, like, I see them struggling with, like, trying to defy diet culture, you know, which is so frankly deadly. And, you know, it's not easy. I'm not saying they're mastering it, but I see them starting to sort of question that. And certainly openness to, like, breathing work and meditation, that's totally there now, I think. I do just want to say, I know you didn't ask this, Orlando, but, like, where are we not, like, where is it not changing? And I would say that, like, financial wellness is something that I think we're, you know, often struggling with in the arts. And I think there are great organizations like Dance NYC and others that are really trying to make change at a system level. But I think it's something we need to start to embrace as part of the wellness package. And I have a podcast about dancer health and wellness, and my podcast partner and I, Marissa Schaefer, we did a large research study and asked dancers about their self-care practices and their perspective on health and wellness. And our interpretation of the data was that the financial area was where dancers were suffering the most. And yet when we asked them, what self-care practices would you engage in to perform better? Overwhelmingly, they chose physical things that often have a high ticket price. cryotherapy or, massage or gym. I mean, of course you can have a free gym membership if you work there maybe, but these are large ticket, more Pilates, more yoga. You can practice those things at home, but it often also involves taking classes. And that was really interesting to me, and something I think we need to start talking about financial health as part of wellness. I'll leave it there.
No, yes. Thank you, Ellie. This is Orlando. I think that also leads into this next question. I love this flow because financial wellness is definitely a part of that holistic wheel, and thinking about we just and still are in a pandemic and have all felt the effects of that. And I know Reverend Nafisa spoke about this earlier in terms of how her ecosystem or artistic ecosystem started to reshape. But I really want to talk about how you all responded as it relates to your artistic ecosystem, because we all had to adapt so quickly. If Ellie, you want to take that and then pass it to Mia?
Sure, yeah. This is Ellie again. I lost my thoughts. I think, actually, Mia, do you want to go first? I need a moment here to process.
Sure. So just correct me if I'm wrong, make sure I'm on the right page here. We're talking about our shifting because of the pandemic, or?
Yeah. So just to reiterate the question, how did you respond as it relates to your artistic ecosystem once the pandemic hit?
For me, it actually opened the doors for me, because as a disabled person, I frequently can't physically get into the dance studio. Like I can't get in the door, or I can't get onto the dance floor, or there's just so many barriers that get in the way. So with everyone suddenly shifting to online, I suddenly had access to dance companies and dance educators that I never would have been able to get a hold of. And that really helped open the doors for me in just terms of realizing there are other possibilities out there. Like there's a dance company near me called Dance Exchange. They do phenomenal work within the dance field, especially, I know locally, I believe also folks outside of the Maryland, DC area might know of them, but I had never been able to take a class with them in person since my disability hit the fully disabling point that it is at now. So they did an Artists for Change workshop, entirely virtual. And it was the first time I got to be in community with other dancers that wanted to make a social change in the same capacity that I was, that prioritized holistic wellness. Honestly, like every time we started a new session and there was a check-in to see, how are you doing? How are you arriving into this space? What do you need to be your full self presently? And even more amazingly, do you need to turn your camera off? Like, can you, like, let's think about that for a second. We can have a dance class where you can dance with everyone, but they don't have to see you. So if that's not how you're feeling that day, you can turn your camera off. And that was just the one day that I was participating and I got to turn my camera off, but still be a part of that cohort. I think I actually cried that day because that was the first time I was 100% myself in a dance space. And I was literally in my mom's office, which is, I'm now realizing, is a recurring theme, because where I am right now is also my mom's office. So shout out to her. But it's, I know from my perspective, things open, but it also, I mean, it did make me realize that there were aspects of what I considered it meaning to be a dancer that needed to shift. Because as with many others, it's a, hey, if I can't do this with others, does it really count as dancing? If no one can see me, does it count as dancing? And within my own private practice, I've been slowly developing a, not really sure what to call it yet. It's an artistic practice in trying to dismantle like internalized racism through dance movements. I will eventually figure it out. I will hit a point where I can welcome people other than my close friends to experience that. And hopefully it will be as amazing as I think it will be. But for the time being, it is what it is. It's right before the pandemic, I had plans to offer a small workshop of sorts with, my local community, just inviting folks in. It's like, here's what I'm working with. Let's see what we're thinking here. Mm-hmm. And the pandemic hit and I was like, okay, we can't do that in person. And it literally took me months to realize that I could switch it to online and it would still have that same impact. That we don't have to be physically in the same space to be emotionally connected. And yeah, I think I have written down a thought. Hang on. Self-care is preventive care. That was the thought that I wrote down at some point. I don't know how that ties into everything I just said, but that was my starting point for this rambling thought. Yeah. So I hope it made sense.
It totally makes sense. This is Orlando speaking. Ellie, I don't know if you are ready to speak on this.
Yes, thank you. This is Ellie. Mia, that was so helpful. Thank you. And so interesting to hear. And I, too, as a non-disabled person, was really feeling the access that was expanding and really also, just pretty overwhelmed with how exclusionary our ideas of what dance are. Dance is art. And even as a parent, I'm a freelancer. I go to work to get paid. I don't get paid if I don't go to work. I have a small child. So when she's sick, and my husband is also a freelancer, he's a musician. So, when she's sick, somebody's not getting paid. And it was so liberating to be able to work from home. My daughter would sit with her giant headphones on the bed and watch a video, and I would teach a class on Zoom. And that was very liberating and also integrating, it's usually family, work, and yet I'm a working artist. It's all my life. So it was nice to be able to combine all of that. And I saw a lot of dancers really benefiting from forced alone time. I always have, for a long time, I've thought it's strange that we always need to be in community as dancers. Again, my husband's a musician and they do a lot of self-practice alone, 6 hours in the studio if they're lucky, practicing. And I've always thought it's a little peculiar that we need someone in the room directing us, even after 45 years of doing this. And so I saw that in a lot of dancers sort of being awoken in new ways when they had to self-practice. But I don't want to put a rose-colored lens over all of that, because we also saw a huge increase in eating disorders and mental health issues once that familiar routine was removed. Reverend Nafisa talked about the importance of routine, but then there's also the importance of flexibility. And without that, it can be really dangerous. And so those are some things that are on my mind that happened in my community during that still ongoing time.
Thank you. This is Orlando. Elena, I know you were able to continue your practice throughout the pandemic. Would you mind sharing a little bit about how you were able to make shifts?
Yes. So this is Elena speaking. So I remember kind of early on in the pandemic, it was maybe October of 2020. I had a friend staying with me and she goes to the University of South Florida. She's a biology major, so not a whole lot to do with dance specifically, but she was taking a course through a performing arts medicine program. And I had never heard of anything like it. I was like, that sounds interesting. But I'm sitting next to her as she's on the Zoom call. I'm half listening in. And the professor says something about dance and mental health. And I was I I've never heard those two things in the same sentence, and that makes a lot of sense. And like the light bulbs went off in my head. I was like, oh, I have a lot to say about this. And it kind of got me thinking about my dance training. And I think a lot throughout my dance training, I would see a lot of red flags of people around me, like a lot of eating disorders, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of just like negative self-talk, people like quietly crying during class, or just like casual locker room banter about not liking their body, just like little things that I kind of recognize as not normal. And because I didn't specifically suffer from an eating disorder, I sort of looked at it as this like us versus me scenario, where I was like, my mental health is fine because I don't have an eating disorder, but mental health and dance is so much more complex than that. Like maybe I was eating enough, but I still definitely had some body dysmorphia. I definitely had a distorted perception of who I am as a person and my worth and how I showed up to dance spaces. Like lots of anxiety, lots of panic. And that's something that I talk about in my article, like what it's like to have a panic attack in the middle of class. Like definitely a lot of mental health stuff, but I didn't recognize that it was something that was affecting me personally until COVID happened. And up until COVID, I was like dancing 6 hours a day at Ailey, like I was going nonstop. And then I remember when like March 15th happened, I was like, oh, I could use 2 weeks. And then like a few months went by and I was like, oh, I can use a few months to rest and relax. And so having that time to really slow down meant that I got to be a 19-year-old girl for the first time. Like I got to really be a person. And so life kind of caught up to me because I had the time to experience life a little bit more. And so I had all these like coming of age moments, which obviously led to me starting therapy. And so I want to be very clear that, first of all, I feel like I have to acknowledge that it's an absolute privilege that I get to go to therapy. Like that is something that needs to change. Like it should not be so expensive, and it should be more accessible to dancers and to everyone. Like everyone needs therapy. So I feel like I have to at least acknowledge that getting to go to therapy is 100% a privilege. When I started therapy, it was about being 20 years old in the middle of a pandemic, being a dance major, which like any person who's in college right now, like this is really hard. Like doing Horton from your tiny bedroom, like that's hard. Like we have to acknowledge that that was a really difficult thing that we all went through. And just being 20 years old is hard. Being a person in the world, that's really, really a difficult thing. So when I started, it was over that kind of stuff, not about dance. And so about 6 months into therapy, I started finally talking about my experience with sexual assault, which was also obviously a very difficult thing to talk about. And I started making these connections between how I felt at that moment in my life and how it felt hauntingly familiar to a lot of things that I experienced in my dance training. And I think two things that stick out to me. One is just feeling like you need to be quiet and kind of submiss to a person in power or a person that has a level of control over you and your body. And I was like, when else have I felt like this? Well, if I'm getting a correction that feels like a little bit invasive, or if I'm in an environment where I don't feel like I can speak up, if I'm uncomfortable, or if I don't feel like I can leave the room. And then I sort of connected this idea of like, I've been taught that the show must go on since I was a child, and you don't stop dancing in the middle of a combination. You don't stop in the middle of a performance. You don't really let yourself rest, like show must go on. And so the change for me was, no, the show can wait. Like you all can wait for me. I am going to advocate for myself and my body and the rest that I need to continuously show up. And I think that's the only way that I have been able to still dance, because I know that it's not that deep. And like people can wait, like a show can stop. It's not that important. And I think just honoring that and really recognizing how your dance training has affected you. And like, I feel like I'm a personal injury lawyer. Like if you've been one of the few lucky folks to wear a leotard and tights and stand in front of a mirror and have someone at the front of the room tell you that you're not good enough, you're not good. Like you gotta unpack that. You gotta think about it. You gotta reflect on it so that you can show up properly for yourself. And if you're a dance educator, for your students, and if you're a person in the world, so you can live your life knowing that dance may have been an escape from reality, but it might have taken you a little too far out of reality too. And dance is this beautiful guide for moving through life, but you gotta think about it because sometimes it doesn't translate into your personal life. And I think my sexual assault was the first time that I realized like that is a lesson that I learned in dance. And that does not mean that you need to be quiet when you're suffering or when you're being violated or if you're uncomfortable. Like speak out and like really honor your body. You have control over yourself and your body. And I think that is the biggest takeaway for me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Elena. Yes, honey. I know, Reverend Nafisa, you also chimed in on this earlier, but in terms of how your artistic ecosystem shifted during the pandemic.
Thank you, Orlando. This is Nafisa. So like Mia, many doors opened, but not for dance, which was interesting because I'm known as a meditation master. I had so many calls. Will you do this? Will you do that? Will you show? It was all virtual because we couldn't go anywhere, but it was all meditation. And at some point, my body was just hurting. So I needed to make sure I was taking a structured class for myself and doing my own workout during the day. And I was hopeful that the in-person class would come back. And here we are 2 years in and just coming back in the hybrid in-person and online. And I chose to teach online because from a spiritual healing wellness perspective, again, like Mia, the door's open. So now all the programs that I'm offering online, I could reach people around the country. So we're in the middle of a spring equinox cleanse. We do all 4 seasonal cleanses. And we had people in North Carolina, South Carolina, Washington State. We had people in Canada. We had people, of course, New York, New Jersey. We had people all Florida. We're all over the country that they've been on my mailing list for years and years, but they don't live in New York anymore, so they couldn't participate. So that was a great gift to us on many levels. And so the African dance itself suffered because I couldn't teach as much as I used to. I did vignettes, my birthday dance class online, something I call Dancing in the Park, which is coming up in August 28th, the last Sunday of every August. I do this in Central Park down by the lake on 103rd Street in Central Park West. If you live in New York, New Jersey, it's free. Come visit, live musicians, fun, food, just have a good time. Not so much food, but more snacky stuff. So little things were online, but compared to who I am as a dancer, it almost became non-existent. And I had to come to peace with that. Like I was struggling with, you're not moving your body, you're not dancing, you're not teaching. But during especially the height of the pandemic, that whole first year and a half, that was not my need. So that's one of the things about, I don't know who said it earlier, but just really being, maybe Elena, being present with yourself and doing what the need is in that moment. The need, what I was being asked to do on so many levels was meditation, stress management, wellness, healing, not dance. Even though I could do it through dance, those were not the populations that wanted to move. So for me now, I'm happy to say there's a great balance. I do the morning meditations and I teach class online. Thank you.
This is Orlando. Yes, for balance. In a society that strives for inclusivity, how are you creating or facilitating in spaces of difference. And difference meaning age, race, class, sexuality, religion, ability, etc. Are there any techniques that you engage with to engage with these communities? I know that Elena, you had chimed in on this question, but I know we have a wealth of information here that, I mean, once you say something might spark somewhere else. So if you want to start, and then we can see how it flows.
Yeah, so Elena here again. So I started teaching dance about a year ago, and it's interesting because my students are not that much younger than I am. I feel like I'm just like one life stage ahead of them. And so I think I have this unique position where I can hold space in a really empathetic way because I was just there. So I think, you know, when I was in my training, and I kind of mentioned this, like I always felt like I needed to be quiet. So I like to a lot of times start class by just opening the conversation, just so we can like check in, like, how are we feeling? What do we need? And I think that's like something that I preach for myself, and I want other people to acknowledge that. And I think because I'm coming at being a dance educator from this very mental health oriented place, I truly believe that dance educators have an unparalleled position of power in how we approach mental health. And when I first started my research, I was like, I want to point my fingers at all the artistic directors, all the choreographers, all, you know, the people who I perceived as having the most power. I think something that I've really taken away is that we dance educators, we dance students have this power. And I think, you know, if you're a dance educator, you need to earnestly investigate how your dance training has affected you on a deeper level, on a spiritual, emotional level, because you will unknowingly or perhaps knowingly pass it on to the next generation of dancers. If we don't change and if we don't evolve, you know, ballet will kind of become obsolete. You know, we need to change with the times. So I think it's, you know, really treating dancers like we would raise a child. Face, listen, be heard, open the floor for people, and come at it like literally with love. You know, you have to treat your students like they're your children. And I really like encourage, if you have gone through formal dance training, like take your dance training, put it on an operating table, cut it open, like really look into it, because if you're going to be the person at the front of the room, you know, don't fail your dancers, don't fail yourself. Like you owe it to everyone that you're coming in contact with to understand how it may have affected you. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to chime in here?
I do. Thank you, Elena, for that. I am so impressed at your wealth of knowledge and wisdom at 21. It's true. I'm older, and so I'm moving into that wise woman age of 64, where you're 21, and I don't know the age of others here, but you know, I have seen so many students over a 40-year career, 40-plus year career. And you're right. And it's important for all of us as educators, and I don't mean to be preachy, but for myself, but to advocate for what you're saying, that we're evolving. And it's important that we not judge the past generation for how they did things, because that's where they were in their consciousness then. And so with the whole millennials and Generation X and this whole digital platform, older people like me are having to challenge ourselves with younger people like you. And it's not always so easy to just listen out of the mouths of babes. Some of us do it well, some of us don't. And of course, it's your job as the young next generation to change and shift the consciousness of the world. That's your job. You don't think of it as a job, but it is, because you're the young ones. We were once young, and we challenged our generation of how they did things. And of course, as you say, the next generation that you're teaching, they will challenge you and us. And so it is, for me, important that more than the titles that we wear or the gender that we associate with, it is so important to see ourselves as whole and complete and worthy unto ourselves. So that no matter what we do or where we are or whoever we're with, we're always coming from a place of self-love and self-care and compassion and tolerance for other people. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
So I
welcome.
just want to acknowledge again how each person here is coming from such a vast background, and how we're all looking at care. What does that look like? How does that look like? How does that look for each person? And each person's medicine is not the same, right? As we've heard here, I am a urban farmer, and a lot of my recent work has been with working with the ground. I've been doing a lot of technological things with connecting people or grounding. Reverend Nafisa, you talked about this earlier, this idea of grounding, and grounding has been really important in this time, like literally to ground us in time. And so to think about that, using the earth as a way to do that. So artistically, I've been having people like place their hands on soil or put their feet on soil. And it is literally an electrical connection to a computer. So we see how that energy is working and making other things function, right? So it's like getting people back aware to the earth for that grounding connectivity. It's really where my mind has been in terms of this self-care and communal care, bringing dance specifically back to this space of grounding. Some of our first dances have been in agriculture. Those were our first dances, around the world, So like bringing these ideas back into our artistic practice, what does that mean for our time for self-care, for communal care, and you think about, a dance like the Kasa, you're harvesting, that the wisdom is in the dance. Like, what are you harvesting? Oh, so you have to be planting something to harvest, so like you have these markers in dance that really let us know about our environments, and about how to care for ourselves. I really am fascinated by the ways in which each of you engage in this idea of care for self and community, because it's as we've heard in the conversation, it's like it's one thing, right? You were talking about the cool downs, Reverend Nafisa. And I, like, as a dancer, I'm like, I can't imagine not cooling down. Like, and that, because now that's a part of, a class structure where people are like, okay, we're gonna do this intense work, and then we'll have this last 15 minutes to get your body, back connected to the earth so you can get out of here, And so that also shows that kind of evolution in our practice. I know I was in New York City as an artist, and thinking about, and still in New York City as an artist. I'm just in grad school right now. But just the time, you have to be in a studio and to get out of there, you don't have that cool down time. You have to think about getting on a train and getting us always the next. And so this earth practice that I've been really immersed in has helped me slow down, being in somewhere right now like Columbus, Ohio, where obviously that's, the Midwest. It's not New York City. The energy is just different, right? I've had some time to slow down and really invest in my artistic practice. And I definitely could do that in New York City, but it's a different energy around your work when you are thinking about how to invest in yourself and nourish yourself, but also nourish your creative practice that will be shared with everyone else. Brotherhood Dance likes to say we are creating a farm to studio to performance practice. Because that's kind of how we've been in cycle with our work, going to different farms as ways of healing ourselves, being able to cook fresh food, having farm to table food at these different residencies, so like Soul Fire Farm or Space on Rider Farm, Sable Project. And this is all throughout the East Coast. So just these different ways that institutions, farms, artists are creating these spaces now to think about the wellness of an artist. What do we need? We need that time to just rest, as Elena was talking about earlier, to dream. Dreaming is really important for artists. And so that kind of dream work is care work. We need to rest. We need to have comfortable environments to be able to do that. And so I really appreciate that. I also want to offer just a movement gesture for all of us that's embodying breath and movement, because we're all dancers, and just something that I do with my students at different times for a self-care practice. So we'll take Hamsasya, coming out of a Hindu tradition. I'm a part of Ananya Dance Theater. So this is a symbol of knowledge and wisdom and peace. So we'll go breathing in over our right, breathing in the left, and we'll take it up and over, crossing in front, around our head, coming forward, crossing in front, to seal ourselves. So we'll do that one more time. So Hamsasya and around 1 and 2. Take it back 3 and 4. I really thank you all so much for allowing me to moderate this space. Thank you, Dance NYC Symposium, for choosing me to moderate this space. It's really a pleasure to be a part of the New York City dance community and to keep thinking about how we're evolving as a field, because it's very important that we do transform and heal for the better, honey, because we all want to dance. So I thank you all so much, and I pass it back over to Dance NYC.
Thank you, Orlando. You did an excellent job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elena, Ellie, Mia, Reverend, Nafisa, and Orlando for this beautiful conversation. To our attendees, I hope you were able to take away some transformative ideas and considerations. A final thank you to our sponsors, to Nancy Rivera from Viscardi Center, and Mike Barrios and Natalie Claring from Sign Nexus for their invaluable support. We are heading over to the session follow-up chat in the community section to take a few questions and wrap up the conversation. So what's next? The daily debrief is next. Today is led by Maria Bowman. Synthesize and reflect on everything you attended at Symposium. You can continue to experience Symposium. Visit our sponsors in the exhibitors hall. We have another virtual expo Showcase at 5 p.m. Create virtual meetups and online conversations at our community board, or take some time away from the screen and rest. Tonight's program includes a pivotal keynote conversation entitled Disabled Artists and a History of Dance Activism and Collective Care, an address by Corbett O'Toole about the evolution of dance activism and the ethos of collective care in the United States. What can dance artists today learn from investigating this rich history? The presentation will be followed by a response session with Dance NYC Disability Dance Artistry Residency Artist, curated by X. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you for joining today's session. A special thanks to our funders, the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, the Howard Gilman Foundation, New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, New York State Council on the Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. A special thanks to our lead corporate sponsor, Con Edison, and our lead dance advocate, Jody Gottfried Arnold. Subsidies for the education and dance worker ticket tiers are made possible by the Arnold Foundation. A special thanks to our leader, host, and partner level sponsors, 92nd Street Y, Harkness Dance Center, Dance Education Library, Cataliote Law, Full Out Creative, Gibney Dance Center, Kumbay Center for African and Diaspora Dance, the Actors Fund, Ballet Hispanico, Fit for Dance, Nai Ni Chin Dance Company, NDI Collaborative for Teaching and Learning, New York Live Arts, and Tom O'Connor Consulting Group. And last, but certainly not least, a special thanks to our Justice, Equity, and Inclusion partners, Art Beyond Sight, Art Space Sanctuary, Asian American Arts Alliance, Center for Traditional Music and Dance, the International Association of Blacks in Dance, Lotus Music and Dance, Museum Arts and Culture Access Consortium, National Association of Latino Arts and Culture, New York Foundation for the Arts, and Women of Color in the Arts. Up next at 4:15, we gather in community in our daily debrief. At 5 o'clock, we revisit the exhibitor hall for more booth activity at our virtual expo showcase. And at 6 o'clock, we gather for our keynote presentation. Stay connected with us by posting your takeaways on social media using the hashtags DanceSimp, DanceNYC 2022, and DanceSimp 2022. On Instagram at dance.nyc, on Twitter at dance.nyc, and on Facebook at dance/NYC. Some features not to miss. Build your agenda of sessions. Connect with other attendees. Join community conversations. Visit the exhibitor hall. Don't forget to check out the 2022 Symposium digital program book. How are we doing? Did you like a session? Use the like feature on your favorite session. Got feedback for us? Take the post-event survey after March 19th and tell us how we did. Need help? Email us at customerservice@dance.nyc. A special thanks to our broadcast streaming partners at Full Out Creative. Thanks for joining. Keep in touch at dance.nyc.